Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part 2 of upgrading Yii2 to Bootstrap 4. I'm going to assume that you have a fully operational Bootstrap Yii with Bootstrap 3 system or program on your system. Okay, completely operational. As you can see, I've got one here. If you haven't, I'll put a link in the corner so you can actually follow the instructions for part 1. And you should be at this point here when you finish that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is that now we've got Bootstrap, a full Yii application in, is we need to remove Bootstrap 3 from the project. So we're going to use Composer for this. So it's Composer remove, and then it's Yii2 Yii2 Bootstrap. And so what this will do is it will call Composer and it will remove the Bootstrap from the Yii2 project. So there we go, and that's done. Now if we actually run the project now, we're going to get a lot of problems. So as you can see, not good. Definitely not good. So we need to actually install now Bootstrap 4. I'm just going to edit the command line because it's easier. So it's Composer require Yii2 Yii2 Bootstrap 4. So that's the command line, and this will then go away and download and install Bootstrap 4. It could take a moment or two on yours. We've now got Bootstrap 4 actually set up in the Yii project, but again you'll find that we have all sorts of problems. As you can see, it's just not going to work. Now we're going to fix it. Let me just show you. If we go into vendor and then Yii2, you'll now see that we've got one that says Bootstrap 4 and the one that said Bootstrap is missing. Now you never ever want to edit any of the files in vendor. That's very important, because every time you do an update it will replace whatever you've edited, which is not good. What we now need to do is we need to do a search and replace for everything except for the items in vendor. I'm just going to highlight all the folders. I'm going to remove the vendor folder, and then we'll go into replace. I want the file pattern PHP, and we're going to look for anything that has Yii Bootstrap. Notice the backslash at the end. Very, very important. So you can see Bootstrap there, Bootstrap here. Okay, and we're going to replace it with Yii4 Bootstrap, and again the backslash. It's actually very important that you search for this exact text. We're going to just see what happens, and we should have about 10 matches in total. There shouldn't be very many. If you've got more than about 20 matches, then it's looking in the wrong files. It should be about 10 matches, unless of course you've made a lot of changes and you've created a lot of views. So we'll replace all of those. You'll see that these will replace above, and there we go. So the 10 matches have been replaced, and you can see it now says Bootstrap 4, Bootstrap 4, Bootstrap 4. Will it work? Well, let's have a look. It does, but what happened to the menu? It's not there. What happened to the breadcrumbs? They're not working properly. What happened here with the pagination? It's not working properly, and of course the footer doesn't look right. It's now brought the powered by over here, and this is because the CSS classes have changed in Bootstrap 4, and we need to change all of those. So that's what we now need to do. The first thing we need to do is go into views and then layouts and then main, which is this one here. app widgets alert, that's good because that's this file here, so that's fine. Now helpers HTML, you can actually change that to Bootstrap 4 if you wish, because Bootstrap 4 descends from helpers, so you can actually change that if you wish. It's your choice. We don't need it at this point, but you can actually do it. But this is the problem we have here with the breadcrumbs. We now need to change that to Bootstrap 4, and the breadcrumbs will now function normally. So you don't change this widget, but you do change this. As I say, you can change helpers if you wish. We now need to change some of the CSS because the CSS doesn't work. And the first part is this part. We need to keep the fixed top so it stays at the top. That's part one that we do need to keep. And we need now to change the CSS. I have another screen open, and I did have the information open, but for some reason I moved it. So we need to change that to the CSS for Bootstrap 4, and that is navbar expand large, navbar dark because we want the dark background and we want the background dark. If we save that, the navbar should work, but we do actually have a problem with navbar right, because if we actually have a look at that and refresh, you'll see the navbar is on the left because navbar right no longer exists. But it does now, it's working, so we need to change that. Now there are a couple of ways you can do that, but I'm just going to do margin left auto, and that will fix that problem. There is one more problem, and that's when you log in and log out. So we've saved that. If I come back and refresh, you'll see that it comes over. If I now log in using the default login, which is definitely not that, and that, and we log in, don't save, you can see that we have a problem with the log out button. So we now need to fix that. That is down here, and we need to remove log out because that's not working, and we need to change that to nav link. And if we save that, we come back and we refresh, you can see that it's now all working. That's all we need to do in main. So main is now working. We have our menu, everything works in there as it should do, so we can close main. We now need to move to the bottom because pull left and pull right no longer exist, so we need to change these to float left and float right. And if we refresh, you'll see that now the footer is correct. That is, I'll just log out just to show you that it works, and it all works as normal. If we actually go to the login screen, there is an error on the login screen. It's supposed to give you more information. It's supposed to tell you what's happening. For example, if I go to contact and do that, it says name cannot be blank, but in login it doesn't, and this is to do with the template, and we'll fix that a little bit later. But that's now that for working. Now we need to change certain things in country. You can now see that the breadcrumbs are working, and if you have the latest version of Yii2, you'll have the icons at the side. If you don't, these will not be there, but you'll see that the pagination isn't working. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go into app asset, and we're going to put the icons in app asset. If we come into assets, app asset, you can see that we've now got Bootstrap 4 asset. Now there's two things you can do in app asset. If you want to use the Bootstrap 4 CSS plugins, you need to add Bootstrap 4 plugin asset to the bottom, and that will use the JavaScript plugins for Bootstrap 4. And here we need to add the link for the Bootstrap icons. I'll just copy and paste this. Now this isn't 100% necessary. If you're going to use Font Awesome or whatever, you could use the CDN for the Font Awesome here or whatever. But as I said, I think at some point Font Awesome might be paid for. If we come back and we click refresh, you'll see nothing has changed. This is because we're using the built-in icons already. That's that part fixed. Now we need to fix country form. If we come to country and form, we need to fix this because we've got widgets active form and widgets active form, so we want to change this to Bootstrap 4. Okay, and we need to change that to Bootstrap 4. As I said before, you can change helpers as well. That should now work on. If we come down to site, everything is fine in site as well. If we come to login on site, you can see we're using that. But the problem is this section, the template for the field config. So what you can actually do is just comment it all out if you wish on that, or you can just comment out the template itself. It's your choice. If we do that and save it and go to login, okay, you'll see what it does is just put it all across. But if you don't put anything in, you can see we get our hint at the bottom. So that is now working, and we now need to fix this part here. What we need is to go to index, and we need to tell it which pager to use because the pager has changed. So we need to tell it which pager to use, and it's now called link pager. And so I'll copy and paste. We enter pager, and it's the Bootstrap 4 link pager class. And if we click on save, refresh, you can see our pagination is now looking very nice. So that's that fixed. Now that's that. It's finished. We're done. Except if you're using an old version of Yii, which you can't upgrade to the latest version of Yii2. It's not possible to upgrade it to the latest version of Yii2. We need to make some changes so that the icons actually appear. How do we do that? First of all, we need to change the index file, so we don't need to change any of these files here, because the problem is this action column. Now, action column in the latest version of Yii has the icons actually hard-coded into the action column, so there's no need to change it. But in the earlier versions it isn't. So what you need to do is you need to create a folder called components, and then inside that folder you want a folder called grid, and then we need to change this line here to actually point to that. But if we do, of course, nothing will work, but let's just change it. So app components grid. Now that's actually pointing to a file called action column inside of grid, which we now need to create. So if we go and create that, new PHP file, and we'll call it action column. Now I'm using PHP 8, which has a problem with inheritance, so I'm actually going to call it action column 4. So click on finish and it will create it. So I now need to go back into index and I need to change the name to action column 4. We have just, first of all, we need to do the namespace. So namespace is app components grid. Next we need to put in some helpers, although this isn't entirely necessary. Now again, helpers can be Bootstrap 4 if you wish, and then we need to extend the class action column. Remember we called ours class action column 4, and it extends the Yii grid action column. So we need to do that. So we need now to override, which we have a couple of the functions in which are in action column. Now the first one is the init default buttons with an S, and we need to change the name of the buttons to correspond to the name of the buttons in Bootstrap 4. So we need to put that in, and then we need to actually change the, okay, let me come back up to the top. So we've changed the init default buttons and we've put in the correct names for the buttons, the icon names, and then init default button singular. Okay, what we've done is we've commented out this line and we've actually changed the class just to icon name. Now if we save that and we come back here, now have a look at these buttons on the side. You can see these are the Font Awesome buttons. If I now click on refresh, when we refresh, what happens is you can see that the icons have now changed and we're using the Bootstrap icons. Everything works as normal, so you can update, you can delete, and you get the request. If I actually come back to country and hit the delete here, you can see I'm going to click cancel. Okay, so now everything works as normal. We've put action column into the uses, and we've changed action column here, and we've changed this line here so that it has just the variable icon name, and we've put the correct names for the icons in here. Okay, so I hope you found that useful, and as you can see it's all working now. Remember that if you do add anything using G, then you will have to edit what you've used. There is lots of help. First of all, in the Bootstrap extension for Yii2, it'll actually give you information about migrating and what needs to be changed and what is broken, so you can see that here. There's also how to use it with widgets and which widgets have been changed into Bootstrap 4 namespace instead of the widget namespace, so all of these can go into the widget, sorry, the Bootstrap 4. You can see HTML helper, okay, has been changed, so it now descends from, so Bootstrap 4 HTML actually descends from helpers there. And you've also got the information about migrating to version 4 in the Bootstrap documentation, and there's quite a lot of information as to what's changed and what you need to change, and that type of thing, and the change of the CSS classes that you need to use. So I hope you find that interesting. I hope you find it useful. If you have, please like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.